And just wanted to welcome you all, each and every one of you. We're so glad you're here. And this today is our last episode with Peggy that we're doing on coping with dog loss in the series that we've been doing. We've been meeting here the last several Thursdays. We're excited to get started with this one. And I'm here with, as always, Hillary Buchholz.
Hey, everybody. So, Patty, just to give you a little bit of background, Patty and I are the co-founders of We Heart Hounds, and we're so happy to have you with us. Our topic today is dealing with help that isn't exactly helpful. So, It should be an interesting topic. Peggy, would you like to say hi?
Hi, I'm glad to be with you again.
That's great. So for those of you that might be new to the series and don't know Peggy, she is an amazing grief coach. She's helped so many people, just a tremendous number of people, work through their grief of losing a dog and toward a path of healing. We're super excited to get started. As always, we certainly welcome your 2 cents to share to the conversation. We'll be keeping an eye out for anything that comes in as we come along, and I think from there we'll just go ahead and get started. So Peggy, do you want to jump right into this topic today?
I'll be glad to. And let me say from the outset, I live in North Carolina, where pollen is like outrageous right now. Yeah. So you may see me taking a drink throughout, and that will just prevent horrendous coughing. So
So do whatever you got to do.
Yeah. Sometimes people say things to us when we're grieving that are just so bad, and sometimes hurtful, and sometimes they are just like absurd. You cannot believe they're saying that. And I want to start out by saying, I think probably all of us have done that at one time or another, when you're in that really awkward situation where you just don't know what to say, but you feel like you have to say something. And so you say something, and for some of us, we start talking, and it's like we want to pull the words back into our mouths because we realize it's like they're really inane or stupid or whatever. Right. But it's a common thing. And one of our hopes in doing this, one is to, let us laugh a little bit about it.
Yeah.
But also to become aware that, these things really aren't helpful. And so that when we are with other people, that we can be more aware. And sometimes we don't even have to say anything. People can be uncomfortable because someone they really care about is in pain. And we don't like to see that. We feel like we ought to be able to fix it. Right. So,
And I think some of the things that are said, that we're going to talk about today, they're really coming from a place of love, or they're not intended to be harmful or hurtful, but they're just not helpful. They're things that we need to be aware of. And I think that's the reason for this topic today. That's really important.
And to think through how is this heard? What's it like to hear this? Because sometimes we say something, and like on the surface, like I see this on Facebook memes all the time. On the surface, it's like, oh yeah, cool, that's really good. But then you think about it, and it's like, oh no, that's not so good.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention with the social media that you kind of touched on there. Sometimes I think with this particular situation, social media kind of amplifies what we can be feeling about insensitive comments and things like that. And it's just partly because you're getting so many comments, and sometimes it'll be the same comment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the commenter, like, I think they're being sincere. Like, if we're giving our most, that's probably the most obvious reaction, is they are being sincere, but it feels sort of amplified because we're getting dozens or hundreds of comments that kind of say the same thing. But, I think that social media aspect of this particular situation can kind of be amplified for.
Right. And I think just being grateful in that situation that they're taking the time, they're making an effort to actually write you and share their concerns, even though it might be repeated above and below you the same sentiment, but just know, I think that somebody's reaching out
Yep.
to help and extend their sympathy, I think is important.
Yeah, to look at what's the intent
Mm-hmm.
behind the word.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and there may be some point later on when you're in a better place that we can talk about it and just say, oh well, that's just
Yeah.
heads up, FYI.
Right.
But in the meantime, we can look at some of the things that aren't so helpful.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So we were thinking it might be kind of lighthearted and fun to take some of these comments that people have heard before, and kind of read them out, and give each of us can give our, what we'd actually like to say in that situation, or if there are, if you've received comments, feel free to let us know about those as well.
Yeah.
But so I don't know, this isn't about shaming anybody, or it's really just to kind of vent a little bit about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we've probably been in a situation, as Patty mentioned, where we've said some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on where you're at, how it's being heard. And I think it'll just kind of give us an opportunity to talk about some of these things, and learn different options, but also maybe the intention, or the most charitable interpretation of the intention behind some of those comments, and
Right.
that kind of soothes some of that immediate, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that.
Right, exactly. And by all means, if anyone has similar experiences, we'd love to know about them. This is hopefully kind of a gathering of like-minded folks, and we'd
Yep.
be happy to hear your stories and share experiences, and we can all vent together about
Yep.
some of these things. So some of them are maybe a little outlandish or harsh. This is not, again, as Hillary said, not meant to be. Really just want to take a good look at some of the word choices people use. Obviously, we want to look at the intent, because sometimes people, they don't care about your feelings, but most of the time, right, people really are coming from a good place. They might not have any idea what you're going through, and what they're saying just falls flat, or falls, wrong, in a wrong way. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first one that you might hear, just imagine yourself, you're walking up to somebody or maybe you don't know all that well. They ask either how you're doing, and you let them know that you've recently lost your dog, and this is what they say: well, you can always get another dog. So like, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, are you crazy? Like, what would you say that to somebody who lost their child? Like, oh, well, you can just get, another kid, no problem, right? Or you've got, uh, opportunity to get another one, no big deal.
But I always want to say something like, yes, I firmly believe in replaceable family members.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that comes from someone who it isn't a pet lover, who doesn't really understand the unique connections that we have with our dogs and other pets. But I think the really good-hearted part of that sometimes is people are anxious that you're going to be grieving, that you're going to feel lonely, that you might miss that dog, and so they want you to be able to skip over that.
Right.
And
don't focus on your grief. Focus on the new opportunity, right?
Yes. Let's just pass over those difficult feelings so you can focus on something new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel that way when you hear it.
Yeah. And that's not always helpful, right? To receive that, like, you want to, grief isn't a comfortable place. Sadness isn't a comfortable place necessarily to be. Sometimes, we can find some comfort in it, but often it's not. But you want to be acknowledged, right? You don't want somebody to just skip right over that. So yeah, that can be not so great.
Well, and I don't want to lead us afield here, but it's a natural thing that people want us to be able to skip over that grief. And couple weeks ago, I wrote a blog post about the cathedral fire in Paris, and how people were immediately saying, well, they can rebuild it. You don't have to be upset. They can
Yeah.
rebuild it. And my point was, we need more than half a minute to grieve.
Yeah.
And so I think when someone says, well, you can just get another one, it's trying to push past half a minute and just short circuit the grief, which never really works.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this next one is a little over the top, but I didn't really like your dog. Maybe you could get something else next time.
Yeah. Why
Yeah.
didn't I think of that? Because it's all about you, right?
I actually have had people tell me that about other people's dogs. Hopefully they didn't say it directly to the person.
Oh,
but I had them say, I never really liked that dog anyway.
Well, and Peggy, don't you have a saying, something about putting it in a book? Like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. A dear friend and I started many years ago when somebody would say something just so ridiculous. We talked about how we were going to write the book of our lives, the great autobiography, or make the movie.
Yeah.
And whenever something like that happened, we just look at each other and go, that one's going in the book.
Yeah, that's a story other people have to hear.
Yeah.
So outlandish and crazy. I can't believe it. Yeah. That's funny.
What happens is when we're able to do that, then it kind of diffuses the statement, and instead of just being all bent out of shape and feeling awful and horrible and whatever, we laugh about it, let it go, move forward.
Yeah. So the next one is, aren't you over it yet? And I can see, it sounds like something very harsh and could be something very harsh, but I can also see it in, let's say, a couple's relationship where one person's kind of either wants to skip over the grief or has already gone through, certain phases of the grief, and they're looking at their significant other and they're like, aren't you over this yet? Come on. Like, now it's just a pity party, right? Now you're just feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
But again, I think sometimes it comes from people who don't value relationships with animals. They've never had a pet, or, I grew up on the farm and they're just part of the farm tools, and we don't get all emotional about that.
Right.
We all grieve at different places. And it's okay to be where you are. Now, it may be, there's one time in which it's a really kind thing, not said like that, but sometimes we gently have to kind of nudge people, because you really can kind of get stuck in the grief.
Can. Yeah.
And so to have someone say, come on, let's come on. Yeah, you are going to have lunch with me. You are going to get a shower, have lunch with me.
Right.
We are going to go do this thing, because you're just kind of cycling through the same thing again and again.
Yeah.
Which is said quite differently from, aren't you done yet?
Right.
Yeah. I think that one sounds more like said in anger. Like, I can definitely see it in that couple situation. Like, it's something that you don't even, it's those words that you want to pull back in your mouth again, something that's said in anger or something, because you're both hurting, those types of things.
Yeah.
And with a couple, sometimes what they are really saying is, this is disrupting my life and I'm tired of it. You're not fixing dinner, or you're not taking care of the yard, or you're not doing X, Y, and Z. Can't we get back to normal here?
Yeah, for sure.
So another one is, I'm not really a dog person, so I don't really get it. Which I think I think I could hear that, depending on how it's said, I think I could hear that charitably. So really being understanding of, like, I'm not, I don't know what you're going through. I've never, that sort of situation. But it could certainly hit your ears differently depending on how and when it's said.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it can be said very kindly. I'm sorry you're feeling like this. Man, I'm sorry, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be kind of snarky.
Right.
I'm a really dog. I just don't get this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, for a lot of these, what we can feel is it can feel like shaming,
Mm-hmm.
like what's wrong with you? And we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
this in some of the other live broadcasts. What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with you that you're feeling like this, or that you're not over it immediately?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, as we keep going, thank you everybody for being here with us today. Let us know that if any of these really resonate with you. So if there's one in particular that you're like, I've heard this before, or oh my gosh, I might have said this before, or I had no idea, or I'm learning something from these, we'd love to know. And we're going to just keep going. We've got a few more just left to do. So this one, I know I have actually said this. And that is, at least they're not in pain anymore.
Yeah.
But there can be a hurtful aspect or a not so helpful aspect to that statement, right? If somebody's not they're if that was said in a time when they were not in that right place in their grief process to hear it correctly, right?
So, a different way of saying that you could think about with friends is, I know they were in a lot of pain at the end there.
Mm-hmm.
Or I know they were really struggling at the end there, which
Yeah.
opens up the conversation. And you can say,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. And it was, I feel awful, but it's kind of a relief. Or,
Right.
oh, yeah, it was. And I so hated that any of it had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so not presupposing
Mm-hmm.
that you know what they need.
Right. Right.
And this might be a little bit of a good spot to talk about the difference between caretaking and caregiving, because part of what we're talking about here is about not only what really makes us upset or makes us laugh when we receive it, but part of it is how do we be a good friend and
Mm-hmm.
support to that person who has lost
Mm-hmm.
their dog.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something called a victim triangle, and you can Google it if you're interested. But one of the places in it is a caretaker. And you might think, well, that's a really good thing. Well, it isn't, because there's a difference between a caretaker and a caregiver. A caregiver is focused on what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, and instead of me deciding how you feel about the loss of your dog, I invite you to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
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 how
Mm-hmm.
you doing today?
Right.
How is it? I was in the yard store. That's not the name of it. The home store with all the garden store. That's the
Mm-hmm.
name. And I, struggling to get this big bag of dirt down. And somebody asked if they could help me. This old white-haired woman, let me help her. I think, no, I got it. I'm good. So they went on. That was a caregiver, because she gave me an option.
Mm-hmm.
Later, I got out in the parking lot, and I'm kind of hoisting them up in the trunk of my car. And this woman stops and leans out her head out the window and says, you need some help? And I said, no, I got it. She throws the car door open with the engine running, the door still open, parked in the middle of the aisle, and comes running over to me and says, here, let me help you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a caretaker. That was about what she needed to do. She
Mm-hmm.
needed me to be her good deed for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't need that.
Yeah.
So in this situation with pet loss, being a caretaker may mean saying, I know what you need to do, or I know how you feel. Being a caregiver is, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
What you need?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your dog. Does that make
Yeah.
sense to you guys?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. There definitely is a big difference. And I think again, each one of these statements can be taken from one perspective or the other. So I think just being aware of who's saying it and the situation that it's in. And sometimes it can be said out of anger and not meant to hurt, even though maybe initially it was, but not in the long term. And then other times it's just something that somebody's saying because they don't know what else to say, and they really want to share their sympathy and support, but they just might not be saying it the right way.
Yeah.
So
that definitely leads into this next comment, because I think there are different ways to say this that can really be a comfort to people, but at least you have other dogs. And that sounds incredibly harsh, but I can see the sentiment behind it is sort of the blessing that you still have these other dogs in your life that are, that you can, gain some comfort from them as well. But just hearing at least you have other dogs really diminishes. It makes it sound like, well, this one that I've lost is,
yeah,
replaceable again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I've found, that people will, point fingers or look for opportunities to, for me, I know when somebody's asked, obviously, we lost Clover in January, and some people know and other people don't know quite yet what's happened. But for those that do, they may check in and say, "How are you doing?" which sounds like a caregiver kind of statement. And then as soon as I make a comment, all of a sudden, now for the next 30 minutes, I'm hearing about all of their loss, all of their tragedies, all of their problems of the day, and how it's almost like a competition. They're suffering more than I. So that just diminishes, almost like, why did you even ask? Other than the fact that maybe I'm providing a topic for you to talk about. Like if I bring up, oh gosh, I'm still hurting, or I'm hanging in there, or it's been a tough day. Whoa, all of a sudden, well, you think you've had a tough day. And then I just sit there, I'm like, okay. So yeah, that's, that can be really tough to swallow sometimes. I start to resent people that are, because then I'm like, why did you even ask if you don't really care,
Well, and two things about that. One is it reminds me of a great line from Beaches that Bette Midler had. And she says she's been talking about herself, and she finally says, "But about me, let's talk about you. What do you think about me?"
Yeah.
So that, there's people who really are not quite good on the empathy stuff, and they really, it has to come back to them.
Mm-hmm. And maybe they're feeling like they're relating to, like, I can relate to your pain, so listen to all of mine because I can relate. Maybe they think that's it. Just
totally, it can be a way of making a connection. It can be a way of trying to make a connection, but again, if you're not real comfortable with it, it can be really awkward. My mother used to shake her head. She was a type 2 diabetic, and after she was diagnosed, people go, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. My uncle had that and he lost his leg."
Oh God.
And they would just always tell the horror stories.
Yeah.
So, the thing about it is that sometimes especially when the loss is fresh, we don't have a space in our lives for somebody else's pain.
No.
Because our pain is so big, we don't have a space for them. And so it's okay to say, well, I'm really sorry for your loss, but right now, all I can think about is Rover. So, but yeah, and that's where we start resenting or getting angry, because we just don't have any space to take in anybody else's pain. And sometimes we can feel a little bit selfish because some horrible thing can happen in the world, and we don't give a rip in that moment because all we can see is our own pain. And I've said this before here, but I really encourage people that grief is one of the times when you get to be a little bit selfish. That
Yeah.
pain is there, and that's okay. That's just where you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually think that's a really important point. Um, to allow yourself to grieve is so important. You got to be careful because, as you said, not too long ago, we don't want to get stuck in it. Um, but I think just allowing ourselves, I think our lives are so busy. They're so full of, all kinds of activities and responsibilities and things that have to get done, and the bills have to get paid, and I got to go to work, and I've got to go, take care of my kids or pick them up from soccer practice or whatever, that you kind of hold that grief in, and you really don't allow yourself to have those moments where you're really feeling it and working through it. So I think that's really important for sure. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about too, this is kind of brings to mind, is the fact that being happy makes other people happy around you, but when you're sad or frustrated or angry or all of those lonely feelings or whatever that you have around grief, that's kind of contagious as well. And sometimes people just really have a hard time knowing what to say or do. It might be something that's unexpected. So, for example, last week my husband had a dentist appointment, and we love our dental hygienist. She is just like the best. She's so sweet. She's a huge dog lover, and she recently lost her dog as well, not too long ago. It's been a little while, but it's still obviously fresh in her mind. And first thing she says is, "Hey, how's your dog?" Because she knows, we're dog lovers too, and we've got Clover, and she just loves hearing all the stories about her and everything. Well, as soon as my husband says, she's no longer with us, and then all of a sudden he starts to tear up because it's still really hard to talk about, now all of a sudden she's just stuck in this, oh my gosh, like just asking, how is your dog, and not knowing the circumstances around it can be something that's hurtful, or and so then you're stuck there trying to figure out, what do I say next, what do I do. So I think we need to be empathetic with most people who are trying to say the right things, even though it might not come off as being the right
Yeah.
thing to say.
There's also the people that are trying to convince you to get another dog. And I think this comes from when they went through, like if they've lost a dog and when they went through it,
Mm-hmm.
how much joy they got once they were ready to get that next dog. So
Yeah,
the part that they're remembering is the joy and happiness, but
right.
they're not taking into account like the time that they spent getting ready to be ready for that dog. So when you hear like you need to get another dog, it's like,
Yeah, I see that all the time on Facebook. I've lost my dog, and what am I going to do? I'm at wit's end. I'm so sad. And all is like, get another dog, get another. Oh, they're the best thing. Get another dog. You got to get another dog. It's just like, I think just giving that person that moment, right?
yeah,
To acknowledge that sadness, and going through that grief. Getting other dogs is, like you said, it's a wonderful option. Not always the option for everybody, but for anybody that can, it's heartwarming. It brings joy and love and laughter back into your life. But as you were saying, I think people are thinking of it as they kind of forget the grief, like, pregnancy, right? You forget how hard it is to have to give birth, and oh yeah, of course I'll have a whole big family, right? Because you
right.
kind of forget the pain. You forget that short time where you were hurting so much. You just remember all the love and the happiness and everything else that the dogs can bring. So
And how much better you felt, but you're not
yeah,
taking into account. You got yourself there when you said
yeah,
you were ready for that next dog, and
yeah,
to assume it for somebody else isn't always gonna be the most effective.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And thanks, Deborah, for your comment. And I'm so sorry for the loss of your dog that you had for so long. It is so heartbreaking and so difficult. And that's one of the reasons we've been doing this series of broadcast, um, because there's so many dimensions to it. And our hearts are broken.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is there's a lot of judgment from other people on the outside looking in about how long they should be broken and what we should do
Mm-hmm.
to make them unbroken, to heal them. And sometimes that is get a new dog, just move on, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I found out, thankfully, knock on wood, I still have my first dog. So I've not gone through it with a dog, although I've gone through it with many cats who I also loved. And I found I had this predetermined notion of how long I was going to grieve or how long it was going to take me before I got another cat. And what happened twice now, it's happened that I had my timeline, but then this cat or these kittens showed up. And I just knew when they showed up, yes.
Mm-hmm.
In one situation, it was like, literally, they were in the vet's office the day I took my cat to be put down.
Mm-hmm.
And the following Monday, I was calling them to adopt them. And I had planned to go for a year without a cat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of the trust and part of the magic I've seen over and over again is that our animals seem to show up when it's the right time. And sometimes we don't even realize it's going to be the right time.
Mm-hmm.
They show up not because somebody says, here, you have to have a new dog. But, you see that picture from the rescue group on your Facebook page, or this dog. I know of people where literally the dog has wandered up to their doorstep,
Mm-hmm.
curled up on the welcome mat, and basically said, I'm yours now.
Mm-hmm.
So to trust that it's okay. We don't have to have a measure. And if you get another dog before you'd actually plan to, it doesn't mean that you didn't really love the dog you had.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
means our hearts are big and filled with lots of love, and
Yeah.
it's time for another one.
Right. Right. Well, I think too that sometimes it can be so hard and so heartbreaking to lose a dog when you come across people that they don't feel the same way about pets, or they just don't have pets. There were a number of times, having a puppy in the house, and I'll relate it, my husband and I don't have children, but I'll relate it to family members or friends as though it's just like having a kid. They get up in the middle of the night, you need to feed them or walk them or do whatever. I mean, it's that puppy phase is a lot of work. And I can only imagine, not having had children, it's very similar. And I'll get a look from people that are like, it has nothing like having a child, but that's coming from somebody who just doesn't get it. So when you lose that furry love of your life, it's just as devastating, right? And there are just some people that just won't ever really understand that. So Deborah, I'm so glad you reached out to us, and anyone else listening or participating or hearing the replays. We're definitely here. We understand, and we want you to feel like this is a safe space to share, either here live or certainly just any hour of any day. You're welcome to share with your experiences and thoughts and feelings. So we get it. All right, so we should probably just keep on moving here. Peggy, you mentioned something the other day as we were kind of talking about what we're going to chat about today, something called anticipatory grief. Can you kind of explain that for folks?
Yeah, sometimes we have a long time to grieve the loss of an animal before we actually lose them. Um, if your dog is sick, and you're doing the chemo treatments and you're going through all of that, or even as you see your dog getting older, when dogs get old and their joints get stiff and they get all white around the muzzle, and You know the time is not going to be as long as you've had.
Mm-hmm.
We start grieving then. Grief isn't something that just starts right when the dog dies. It's as we start anticipating the loss. And what happens is we anticipate what it's going to be like. You know, we may have a thought of, gosh, how will I know when it's time? Or we may think
Mm-hmm.
through that, or we may think through of what life will be like when this dog isn't there. And so what can happen is when you've had this long period of anticipatory grief, when the dog actually dies, you may not have a whole lot of grief reaction. And sometimes people get really confused about that because they think, I'm a horrible person. You know, I had a few days of grieving and now I'm good to go. But the reality is that you've been grieving for months or sometimes a year or more. And so you've already done that work. So if you're in that situation and you find that when the dog actually does die and you don't have as big of a reaction as you thought you would, you know, just know you have been grieving for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I have another question for you. What do you do with people that you can't avoid? So they might make some kind of rude comment. These might be friends or family members, like people you just like, you're at a get together, you're in a social situation. You can't just walk down the hall and keep walking. Like, what do you do if somebody makes some kind of what we're talking about today and what we think are outlandish, right? Or at least unhelpful comments to you. What do you do if you can't get away from somebody, or you have to continue that relationship, right? You can't just shrug it off, make a comment, laugh, and say, well, I'll never have to deal with that person before, or they're clueless, they don't know what they're talking about. But these are, closer relationships of people.
Well, in the moment, a coughing fit can be helpful. Excuse me, I need to go get a drink. Um, but people you're going to have there's something we call the broken record technique, which vinyl is coming back, so hopefully I can keep using this analogy. For old folks like me who grew up with vinyl, that it hit that spot where there was a scratch, and it would just play the same thing over and over, and it wouldn't keep going, just the same thing over and over. So that's what you can do with someone. You don't have to make a case for why your grief is justified. If it's somebody who just does not get it, you don't have to convince them of how it's okay for you to have your grief, because you're never going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
If it's that person who's not open. So you just keep saying the same thing over and over again. We're doing okay. Or, yeah, life's different, but we're okay. Or
Just doing what we can, or
doing what we can, or yeah, you may not get it, but we really love this dog. I don't know why you may not get it, but we really love this dog.
Yeah.
I don't know why you went through all that. We really love this dog. So, and people can't make us say something if we don't choose to say it.
Yeah. Feed into that.
Yeah, what happens sometimes is we feel like we have to convince them. And so we either get more and more passionate about it. You will listen to me and understand this.
Right.
Or what's worse is we get more and more vulnerable with them and try to we show them more and more of our pain. And they're really not a safe person to do that with. So we wind up hurting more because of that. So it just, we miss him a lot, or we miss her a lot. Period. That's all you have to do is just, you don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to be a jerk. We miss her a lot.
I think too, it can help if you have somebody there, or if you know, if it's something that you can kind of prepare for, if you have somebody there that you can kind of, even just having that little look across the room that
Mm-hmm.
they know what we're going, like they understand. So I've got a sympathetic person that I can kind of relate to, and they can see, oh, they're talking to so and so. I'll probably walk over and, like interject or do something to kind
Mm-hmm.
of relieve this situation. So.
Yeah.
Or even if they just have what I call the telepathic eye roll, where you don't actually roll your eyes, but you both know you want to.
Yep, yep.
Exactly. Oh, this has been a great conversation. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to ask Peggy before we kind of wrap up for today? I know that takes a minute or so for us to see it, so please chime in. We'd love to hear from you if you have something else. And if you're watching on the replay, by all means, you're welcome to chime in as well. We go through and we read and acknowledge all of your comments. So, and while we're doing that, while we're waiting for some last minute input here, Peggy, do you have any final thoughts on this topic on, how to kind of handle not so helpful people or comments or situations that are, hopefully intended to be helpful, but they're just not.
I think it's a really good approach to take what's helpful, and in this situation, it may be the intention that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
However awkward it is, take what's helpful and let go of the rest. I tell my clients, you don't have to attend every drama you're invited to. So, take what's helpful and just let go of the rest. You got more important things to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think there was something too that you said earlier that, just being open to surprises, being open to, healing. Sometimes somebody might say something or do something, hand you a pet when you're not ready for another animal. But then all of a sudden, if you're open to it, that might actually be the thing that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's good.
And speaking of things that are helpful, I just wanted to put out a reminder of Peggy's ebook on how to deal with the loss of a dog. And it's available for a limited time to our We Heart Hounds audience. So we'll have a link in this replay if you want to grab a copy of that. It's a fantastic resource for dealing with grief and dealing with the lost dog.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really proud of it, and it's just for our We Heart Hounds family, so please take advantage of it. I think it'll really do wonders for you or anyone else that you know, a family member or friend that could benefit from it. And so, Peggy, did you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, I was just going to say that
Yeah.
even if you're not in this situation right now, I think it's a good resource to have.
Mm-hmm.
If for nothing else, to help you be aware of some of these dynamics
Mm-hmm.
with friends and supporting
Mm-hmm.
friends,
Right.
and then also just to have.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For sure. So, Peggy, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, this is our last episode. So, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, reach out, have a question, what's the best way to connect or contact you?
Well, you can email me at peggy@peggyhaymes.com, and you can put that link in the notes. Also, I'd mentioned my blog. You can find that at heartcallings.com.
Okay.
I will try to remember to come and post a link to this particular blog. It's talking about grief in general, but I think it holds true, obviously, for grief of the loss of a pet as well.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Well, thank you everyone so much from the bottom of our hearts. We're so happy to have you here, and we're just thrilled to have been able to provide this truly as a service to our We Heart Hounds family and and those extended members of that family that reach out beyond that. It's just been a pleasure to have this time together. We're so grateful for your interaction and engagement and all of that. It really made a world of difference throughout the entire series. So thank you so much for that. And if you know of somebody that would benefit, just consider other family or friends that would like to watch the replays or anything like that. We'd love for you to pass that along.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. It really has been an absolute privilege to be able to provide this series, and I think hopefully it has really, hopefully you're feeling the healing, love, and support and caring that we're sending out to you, because it really has meant the world for us to be able to provide this.
Agreed.
And I want to add my thanks to you two and to We Heart Hounds for doing this and creating this great resource for people. I was talking back and forth on Facebook with a friend of mine whose dog is very, very ill, probably in last stages of cancer. But she said, I watched your Facebook Live on such and such, and it was so helpful. And I want my husband to be able to watch it too.
Oh,
so I so appreciate you initiating this and creating something that can go forward and have those continued ripples for folks.
That's great. You're going to make me cry.
Yeah.
Thanks. I don't want to end on tears. Anyway, thank you. That means the world. It really, truly does. This has just been a labor of love. We don't get anything from this. It really is just something we want to share with the world, and we can only do that through you. So, and with Peggy's help. So, thank you, Peggy. It's been absolute pleasure to have you, and an honor to have these conversations together. So, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, your week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next go around, whatever that might be. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.